Hi everyone, for my project I decided to study coronary artery disease. There are two coronary arteries located near the heart, the left main coronary artery, LMCA, and the right coronary artery, RCA. These arteries deliver blood to the respective sides of the heart, ultimately regulating the heart's rhythm and ensuring that the heart gets the proper amount of oxygen and nutrients. However, the buildup of plaque can clog these arteries, reducing how much blood gets to the heart. This is called coronary artery disease, or CAD. This plaque buildup is the result of excess cholesterol and other substances being deposited. A visual difference between coronary arteries that are healthy and coronary arteries with CAD are shown in Figure 1. Sometimes people with CAD will show symptoms such as chest pain, but unfortunately it's not uncommon for people to find out they have coronary artery disease through getting a heart attack. This is a big part of why heart disease in general is the leading cause of death in the United States. In hopes of eventually reducing this number, there have been many studies that attempt to model the coronary artery. In 2005, Lally et al. Found that the hyperelastic behavior of the coronary artery could be modeled using the third-order Mooney-Rivlin strain energy equation. Many other papers I read for this project continue to use this equation for coronary artery modeling. This differs from the version of the Mooney-Rivlin equation we learned in class, because instead of using the bulk modulus, additional terms with the two invariants are used. Figure 2 shows this equation and the constants that describe coronary arteries. However, this equation is not available as an option in FE Bio, as the version used in FE Bio is more similar to the one we learned in class as shown in Figure 3. With this in mind, I found a paper by Kalakar et al. In 2017 that used the more traditional form of the Mooney-Rivlin equation. This paper determined that this form wasn't ideal, but the constants that worked best are shown in Figure 4. I noticed that these constants are very similar to the constants in the Lally et al. Study for the linear terms. So, for my project, I decided to use these two constants in my FE Bio model. I chose the Lally et al. Constants over the Kalakar et al. Constants because the Lally et al. Paper provides constants for plaque tissue as well. However, by doing this, I was still missing the bulk modulus. To get this value, I looked at a paper in 2013 by Karami et al. And found the elastic modulus for healthy coronary artery tissue and corresponding plaque. The elastic modulus can be used as the bulk modulus in this case because I'm using the isotropic and homogeneous assumptions. Hyperelasticity constants weren't the only variable I tested, as I also examined geometry. A study in 2013 by Moreno and Baganagar used data from intravascular ultrasounds to segment 3D models of diseased coronary arteries and eventually performed finite element analysis on these models. Out of the 42 patients they got data from, they found 4 primary ways that the plaque arranged itself in the coronary artery, as shown in Figure 5. For my project, I considered the protruding and diffuse types. However, given that segmenting ultrasound or CT data is outside the scope of this project, I needed to find a way to create a simplified model. This is when I found a paper by Eschke et al. That created a simplified model of the coronary artery. Their study was based on learning the mechanics of coronary artery stents, so they made their simplified model off of what these stents were designed for. I use these exact dimensions in my model, as shown in Figure 6. The right of this figure shows the dimensions in millimeters of the coronary artery that I used, and the dimensions on the left are of the plaque that I used. In the picture on the top of Figure 6, the red represents the artery and the yellow represents the plaque that was created in FE Bio when plugging in these dimensions. The next step was to determine a mesh for this model. In order to find the best mesh, I needed to determine the largest characteristic microstructure dimension to ensure that my representative volume element size is bigger. You may recognize Figure 7 from our unit on blood vessels. Coronary arteries, like most other blood vessels, fit this categorization and are made up of 3 layers: the intima, or the innermost layer, the media, or the middle layer, and the externa, sometimes called the adventitial layer, on the outside. These layers are labeled I, M, and A respectively on Figure 7. One of the largest applicable microstructures in this anatomy are the collagen fibrils. According to a 2017 study by Liu et al., the coronary artery collagen fibril diameter is 2.61 plus or minus 0.89 micrometers. I determined that I needed to find a representative volume element size that was larger than 3.5 micrometers, the large end of this range, but smaller than the 3 millimeter inner diameter size of the plaque. I decided on 0.5 millimeters. So in order to get this size, there had to be 40 elements across the length of the full artery, given that it was 20 millimeters long. I used this reasoning to plug in the values for slices, segments, and stacks in FEBIO to create the meshes for each object. With this decided on, I had to finalize test cases. The two variables I am testing for this project are geometry and hyperelasticity constants. The top two models represent cases where protrusion from plaque is not present, so only the artery geometry was created. The right two models use the plaque elastic modulus and hyperelasticity constants for the Mooney-Rivlin strain energy equation, as opposed to the values for a healthy coronary artery. These cases represent the diffuse geometry type presented in the Marino and Baganagar study. I also did a fifth case to model a coronary artery that did not have diffused plaque, but did have protruding plaque, and each object used their respective hyperelasticity and modulus values. Ultimately, my objective for this project is to see how normal blood pressure affects stress on the inner walls of each of these cases. Normal human blood pressure is 13.3 kilopascals, so I applied this value as a load to all of the inner walls, as shown in Figure 8 by the sections highlighted in blue. Many of the papers I referenced earlier used this value for blood pressure. For cases without a protrusion, there's only one surface selected, but the surface of the protrusion was selected for the cases that had it. Another boundary condition used for this model was that all vertical surfaces at the ends of the model were fixed in all three directions, as shown in Figure 9. Again, the cases with the protrusion had additional surfaces with this boundary condition due to the nature of the geometry. When considering what to set for time steps, I acknowledge that many papers I've referenced mention the cardiac cycle being 8 seconds long, so I figured a total time greater than 8 seconds would be irrelevant. So I set 8 time steps, each for 1 second. In order to know what to look for once I ran the simulation, I referred back to the Eschke et al. Paper that found that von Mises stress on the inner coronary artery wall when a stent is inserted is 0.282 megapascals. I expect that only applying normal blood pressure would result in a stress that is smaller than this value, but is on the same order of magnitude, at least in the normal case. These are the resulting stresses in megapascals for each case at the final time step. You will notice that the model representing both healthy geometry and material properties have a maximum stress of 0.103 megapascals, which is what was predicted, as it is lower than 0.282 megapascals, but not by an order of magnitude. All the other stresses are much lower, and the lowest was the case with healthy geometry but the material properties of diffused plaque. This indicates that both the stiffer material properties of plaque and the protruding geometry are factors in determining stress, but the material properties have a slightly bigger impact. An interesting extension of this study would be extending the length of the protruding plaque to see if this makes a difference in maximum stress, and if the maximum stress starts to become lower than the case with only diffused plaque. Thank you for listening, and please share your feedback so any questions or concerns I may have missed can be added in my final report.